Hey everybody, welcome back with another video on some awesome magical topics. I have Ramon with me today. Say hi, Ramon.
Hello.
This is his first time on Zoom and he's coming from his phone. So everyone, we gotta give him extra love because he was very patient in connecting with this for me. So Ramon and I have known each other for years. We go to a writing conference together. And that's kind of how we first connected. And I was reading his book. It's Out of Order, right?
Out of ordure, yeah.
Ordure, yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's pronounced differently, which is spelled O-R-D-U-R-E. It's ordure. And it's actually this great book about fairies. So I wanted to start like a discussion about fairies, basically, because there's so many. I'm gonna pull the cover up. That's what I'm doing here. I just pulled, oh, here it is. I love it. She's so sassy. Look at this fairy. It's like the sassiest little fairy ever. I saw the cover and was so excited about it. Anyway, so I want to talk about fairies because fairies are represented so many different ways in fiction. And, you know, like you see the nice ethereal, gauzy, like Tinkerbell-like fairies, or you have some sorts of like bloodthirsty fairies with fangs that are like carnivores. Actually, those are mine. I have those. So, Ramon, tell me your favorite kind of fairy.
Um, Honestly, like you said, there's just so many that it's hard to pin down. But I'm maybe it's just the I don't know, the optimist naive person in me. But I kind of like the ethereal. You find them in the forest. They're a little bit mischievous,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not really gonna do you bad. It's they're more like you wake up and then like your pants are gone and then like you find them on behind you or something like that. So
Like
they're not really good at,
yeah.
yeah.
You think fairies have kind of been like pigeonholed a little bit into like that like really feminine kind of stereotype? You know what I mean?
I think they have, and it's actually a reflection in the ones that I wrote as well, because and that's actually something that I might explore in the future because
Yeah.
it's hard to picture a male fairy. It is.
The male
You know, I'm
Tinkerbell. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I'm sitting here thinking about like, a male fairy with like 5 o'clock shadows, right? And it's just, you know, it's kind of a hard thing to imagine, but as the more I'm talking about it right here, it's definitely something I'm probably gonna have to look at because it
Yeah.
reminds me of what is it, A Bug's Life, when they had the ladybugs, and then they walk up to the ladybug and it's a guy, and he's like, "Yeah, what? You think we're all like this?"
Oh,
You know
I
what I mean?
forgot about that.
So it kind of
Yeah.
makes me think about that. So that actually might be fun to explore.
Could you do like volume 2 of the fairies and have it
Yeah,
be
I'm actually working on it. I'm working on it. I kind of had to step away from it because I had another contracted obligation with an anthology. But once I'm done with that, I'm going to finish up 2, and I'll either jump straight into volume 3 or finish edits on a monster of a book that I have to finish and then go back to 3. But my hope is to get 3 more volumes done and hopefully out next year.
geez, hashtag writer life. You got all these like contracts and anthologies and stuff. That's freaking awesome, man. Well, the reason I wanted to ask you about your fairies is because I started reading Out of Ordure, and I was like, so I read at night before I go to bed, and I was cracking up. Like I had to stop reading before bed because it was just so funny, and it's really quite subtle. Like your fairy humor is kind of subtle. So the main character is named Bacania, right? Not Bacania.
Yeah,
I've
the
asked you
Kanye.
like 5 times now. And it's funny because of her job. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your fairies and how you made them so differently? Like tell us about them, how they're different and what they do. And then I'd love to hear a little bit about how you made them different because like we said, fairies are kind of stereotyped.
Yeah. Well, everybody, it's kind of a play on what everybody thinks of fairies. Everybody thinks of fairies as, they're jumping from rose petal to rose petal, and they teach cats how to mew, and they help bees pollinate and all this stuff, and this big glamorous, thing, this glamorous job. But the world is a big place, and there's a lot of different aspects to the world that needed a helping hand, including some of the less desirable things. It's just like our society.
Yeah.
You know, we have waste management, that collect garbage and so forth and so on. And I mean, fairies are no different. As much garbage as humans produce, you telling me there's no magical assistance? The planet will be completely garbage, So you have to have a garbage. And Ficania, as we see her name, and she actually, one of the things that annoys her about her own species is that they're so on the nose with how they name themselves or they name their children. And her name being Ficania and her being an ordure engineer fairy is is exactly that. So there's fairies that do have the glamorous jobs where they help flowers to bloom, and
Yeah.
you have Tigressa who helps to make things even sweeter.
Yeah, she's really
But
sweet, like sugar, like the Tigressa sugar. Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
I got you. I saw
But
that.
yeah, it's they have the fun jobs and everything, and then you have Garbita and Ficania who have the less glamorous jobs, but
So
still essential.
Garbita works with garbage in a human world, like to get rid of garbage. And Picania works with poop. She cleans up poop, basically.
Magically processes food. Yeah.
Magically processes poop. That's like so formal. So yeah, like I think one of the first scenes, she's like dealing with some dog poop that an owner didn't clean up, and she's like bitter about it. What I love about her too is she's so grumpy. Oh my goodness, she's so grumpy. And I loved that because that did break out of that like sweet magical fairy stereotype. I mean, already like you've broken out of it so beautifully, and you gave me something totally different and funny, because so much of your humor is in those subtle like names and all that stuff. And then she's talking to like a counselor in the first scene, and she's really angry with him, and he's a satyr. And the thing that I loved about your fairy book is that I said I feel like it's a tour of magical characters or like creatures. So if you love like satyrs, and you have like humanoids and demons and all these great like fairies, like goblins, like you have so many that also like you created a culture with them, right? Like they all have jobs within this world and titles and like jokes that it was like such a delightful read because it was super light and fun. Like, you would kind of want fairies to be, but also different, because it did break the mold in so many ways. So that's why I wanted to hear more about your fairies. So how did you like come up with this? Like, where did this come from?
Honestly, okay, so Ficania was born from a hiking trip. So I was going for a hike with my wife and one of her friends, and so we're walking on the trail, and we walk by this. I'm going to try to be as less graphic as possible. A rather sizable specimen, and and so as my wife braced herself because she knew the rant was coming. I was like, "See, this is why we can't have nice things. This is absolutely ridiculous. See, you don't have people want to have a dog, but they don't want to clean after it. Blah blah blah." And I'm just going, and my wife is just shaking her head, and her friend is just dying, just laughing. And I'm like, so who's gonna clean this up? I mean, is there a shit fairy who's gonna come and clean it up? I mean, who's gonna clean it up? And
And
then
you're like, ding.
it wasn't my ding. It was my wife and her friend. They were like, "You need to write about that." And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "You need to write about a shit fairy." And I'm like, "I'm not gonna write about a shit fairy, right?" And so they're like, "I'm telling you, you need to write it." And I'm like, "Yeah, all right, I'll think about it." Yeah. And then a month went by, 2 months went by, and my wife was like, "So have you started writing about that fairy yet?" And I'm like, "No, no, I haven't. I haven't started writing about that." And then after the third month, she's like, it doesn't have to be a long one. Just write about that fairy that you were talking about on the hiking trip. And she's like, and don't make it long, 'cause I know how you get. And I started thinking about it, and then the ideas came, and I was like, you know what? I might actually be able to do something. And I the one of the scenes in the novella that you were speaking about was kind of a spin on us encountering that on the hiking trip. And I just thought about what it would be like to be a fairy whose job is that, surrounded by all these fairies with all these glamorous jobs and sprinkling just sprinkling fairy dust everywhere. And she's like, "Are you kidding me? Like, we
She
with
is.
that?" I have to process this log right here, and you're sprinkling fairy dust, and you're telling me to be, like cheerful. Get out of
Yeah.
here.
That was one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah.
Well, so relatable too. Like it's like we all have that coworker, that member of the family that's just so perky. You're like, stop it.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah.
Oh, I loved it. Well, it was an amazing book. I love any new version of fairy, right? Because there's no, I mean, we're all just iterating on the same concept and just trying to come up with something different. And you definitely succeeded, my friend. So thanks for writing it and putting it out there. I can't wait for, I'm glad to know there's a volume 2 and potentially volume
Oh,
3. Break the mold
it's
on
been a
the
long
men a little bit. So yeah, thanks for coming on and chatting with us and figuring out Zoom for me.
time. Well, thanks for having me. It's been great to be on your show.
And if they want to grab a copy, is it on all the retailers or because I got mine off Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, some other
Random
retail.
Scrib,
I
Tolino,
can't
Playster, yeah,
Yeah,
so many
yeah,
random.
it's pretty much everywhere. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Ramon. We'll talk to you later.